Some problems just feel impossible. Not because they're hard to build or calculate, but because they're human problems. They're messy, they're complicated, and they are deeply, deeply personal. So how in the world do professionals deal with challenges that have no easy formula? Well, today, we're going to peek inside their playbook and break down the mental toolkit they use to solve some of the most complex human problems you can imagine. All right, let's just jump right in with a scenario. Picture this. You've got a family, 3 generations, all living under one roof in a small town. There's conflict, there are health problems, money is tight. It's not just one thing going wrong, it's like a dozen things all hitting at once. Now, if someone asked you to help, where would you even begin? Because here's the reality, a situation like that isn't a straight line. This image of tangled threads, it's the perfect metaphor. It's so tempting to just find one loose end and pull, right? But what happens if you pull on that one thread? Let's say it's the financial stress. You might accidentally be tightening all the other knots. The family relationships, someone's mental health. You can't just pull on one thread. You have to understand the whole pattern. So how do you learn to see the pattern in all that chaos? Well, believe it or not, there's actually a structured method for doing it. Let's open up the playbook that the pros use. And here's the thing. The secret isn't just having good intentions or wanting to help people. It's a really disciplined intellectual framework. And we found the whole thing laid out perfectly in a graduate-level course syllabus for Social Work 520. So for our purposes today, this syllabus, this is our training manual. The entire course is built on one single, powerful idea: human behavior in the social environment, or HBSE for short. And what it means is actually pretty simple but also profound. You can never understand a person in a vacuum. You have to understand the world they live in. The two are constantly bouncing off each other, shaping each other. This one idea is the lens for everything else we're going to talk about. All right, so where does this framework begin? It starts by breaking the problem down. First, you have to zoom all the way in on the individual at the center of the storm. And the key is you don't look at them as a single problem to be solved, but as a whole person. So how do you do that? Well, the course teaches students to see a person in these 3 dimensions. First, there's the biological person. That's their physical health, any genetic factors, chronic illness, that kind of stuff. Then you have the psychological person, their emotions, how they think, their sense of who they are. And finally, the spiritual person. That's their search for meaning, their purpose, their core beliefs. You have to consider all 3 of these to even start getting a clear picture. But hold on, remember the name of the game? Human behavior in the social environment. So understanding the person, that's really only half the battle. Now we have to zoom back out and map the world they live in. And I love this part because it organizes that world into layers, kind of like those Russian nesting dolls. The smallest, most immediate layer is the family, right? With all its history and unspoken rules. Zoom out one layer, you've got small groups, friends, coworkers, who can be sources of support or stress. Zoom out again, and you've got formal organizations like schools or workplaces that have their own structures and rules. And finally, the biggest outermost layer is the entire community. And this is so key, because a problem on that outer layer, like say a lack of public transit, can have a massive direct impact on that family's crisis in the middle. Each layer is pushing and pulling in its own way. And that's why this layered map is so powerful. It's a diagnostic tool. By looking at each layer, a professional can pinpoint where the stress is coming from. But, and this is just as important, they can also identify sources of strength. Is there a supportive church group? A helpful government program? The solution might be hiding in plain sight in one of these layers. But, okay, just identifying the layers is the first step. Next, you need the right tools to understand what's actually happening inside them. Okay, so we have our map of the person and their world, but a map is pretty useless if you don't know how to read it. This is where we get into the practical, how to use it skills. This is a huge piece of the puzzle, straight from the syllabus. It's not enough to just know one theory about why people do what they do. Students have to master what's called a multi-theoretical framework. It sounds fancy, but all it really means is learning to look at the exact same problem through a bunch of different analytical lenses. So one theory might focus on their childhood, while another completely different theory looks at how the family is interacting right now. Same problem, but you get totally different and equally valuable insights. A great way to think about it is like a toolkit. Each theory is a different tool. One might be a wrench for family dynamics, another a screwdriver for workplace issues, and another a magnifying glass for individual thought patterns. You can't fix everything with just a hammer, right? You need the right tool for the job. And that knowledge comes from a huge body of research. And they don't just learn this stuff in a lecture, they have to prove they can do it. Look at these 2 assignments. For one paper, they have to take a single case study, like Our Family from the Beginning, and analyze it using 3 completely different theories. For another, they have to go out into the real world, observe a community, interview people, and identify not just its problems, but its strengths. This is where theory becomes a real practical skill. This quote from the syllabus just sums it all up perfectly. The goal is to see a case understood and interpreted through the lens of each theoretical perspective. See, it's not about finding the one right answer. It's about developing the mental flexibility to see a single situation from all these different angles. I mean, that's really the core of advanced critical thinking. And it is so important to remember this isn't based on guesswork or just someone's opinion. It's a real discipline built on decades of academic research and literature. These theories are the solid building blocks that allow people to construct a really sophisticated and reliable understanding of a problem. Okay, so this is an incredible framework for professional social workers, for sure. But what's the takeaway for the rest of us? Let's zoom out one last time for the big picture. The real power of this whole playbook is that it's not just for solving other people's problems. It's a way of seeing the world. It actually trains you to recognize the invisible systems, family dynamics, cultural pressures, economic forces that are constantly shaping your own behavior, your beliefs, and your opportunities every single day. So let's go all the way back to those tangled threads from the beginning. At first, it just looked like a hopeless mess. But now, with this framework in our heads, we have a map. We can start to see how the biological thread connects to the psychological one, and how that connects to the family thread, and so on. The tangle is still complex, no doubt, but it's no longer incomprehensible. And that leaves us with a final thought. This whole framework isn't just an academic exercise. It's a lens you can apply to your own life. So take a moment and just ask yourself, what are the biological, psychological, and social forces shaping your world? What are the invisible threads pulling in your life? The answers? Well, they might just change the way you see everything.